Hi, so this is the video of Amunhotep I. Now he was the son of Amosi, not the first son, the third son. Others. So we're talking about 1526 BCE to 1506 BCE. So a reign of around about 20 years. That's 3,546 years ago, approximately. The original burial was in the Valley of the Kings. And he was reburied in that 1881 cache that his father was found in at Bakri. He continued ruling Egypt within the boundaries, so he didn't go beyond the delta, and he didn't go beyond the first or second cataract in Nubia. So his policy was his father's reunited the country, and he's keeping it stable. So he's keeping everything ticking along. One thing that is noticeably different here is that he established a mortuary temple which was separate from his tomb. So his tomb was in the Valley of the Kings. It's probably one of those unknown tombs because it's lost all of the writing and paintings, probably due to the floods and the debris over the years, as I mentioned earlier. And in my introduction to the Valley of the Kings, I forgot to mention that maybe they chose that valley because it had a natural primeval mound, a pyramid shape over the valley, and that seems to pop up in local burials where they like pyramid shapes over their tombs, over their tomb entrances. And now that's something that goes back to the seperate burials that we saw in the first intermediate period in Waset. Remember, we got the seperate tombs, and above them they probably had solid pyramid structures. So the primeval mound of creation is very important to the ancient Egyptians. It represents a rebirth. So if you had something which showed creation near or around your tomb, then the spirit of yourself can be reborn using that shape as well. So that's another consideration. So Amunhotep I established the royal workshops on the west bank of Waset, and also a workers' village. Now the mortuary temple he built was at a place called Dela Medina, which is very close. It's on the other side of the mountain to the Valley of the Kings, and that's where he established a workers' village. So the royal workshops and workers' village were at Dela Medina. Now, if you look at the village, it's organised into two levels. The lower level is where the people lived in their village, and then the upper level is where they are buried. So they cut their tombs on that cliff face and were buried opposite the village. The tomb design that you can see is that it's got a descending passageway which opens into a burial chamber, and then another lower vertical shaft. So it was used as the upper level was the decorated chapel, which would be for the relatives to go and visit their ancestors, and then the vertical shaft and the lower level is where the coffins were placed. So it was used as a mausoleum by families, because these are very expensive items to have cut. And then above that chapel, you've got that solid pyramid shape. So that's the importance that even people at this level felt that the creation mound, the mound of creation, was very important to them for their spiritual rebirth. So what was it like for these workers living in this village? Well, they're living there as a community. So the workers have their families and their children living there as well. So they are a closely guarded community, and they're very privileged. The work, well, you've got the miners. A lot of Egyptian archaeologists call them tomb builders, but they're not building anything. They're cutting holes in the sides of mountains, and that's mining work. So they're cutting those passageways and those burial chambers in the mountain, so they're mining. Then you've got the scribes. So once they've cut the passages and the rooms inside the mountain, you've got the scribes who are coming along once the walls are completely flat by the finishers, and they're putting on all the magical pictures and the magical writing. Then you've got the artisans who come in behind the scribes and they do the painting. Very fine work. And then of course you've got the overseers, the guys in charge of the project, who probably answer to a mayor of the necropolis as to and give reports as to how the work is proceeding. This is can be dusty, dirty work, and in very difficult light situations. They didn't have electricity or gas lamps in those days, so they relied totally on oil and a wick to give them light. And considering that they didn't have access to modern lighting, they did a wonderful job. Those pictures that you see in those royal tombs are amazing, and the writing and the accuracy is art form in itself. It has been suggested through experimental archaeology that maybe they used bronze mirrors to illuminate the insides of the tunnels and rooms, and I have seen an example, and it is very feasible, because again, working in the dark is not a good idea for accuracy, is it? The materials that they use, so the miners are cutting into that shale rock using copper chisels. Now, copper is very soft, so how did they manage to do that? Well, shale is quite a weak rock formation, but we think that they tapered the ends of the chisels with fire and water to make them a little bit harder. Because the copper came from the island of Cyprus, which is 1,000 odd miles away, the chisels were measured, weighed at the beginning of the day and weighed at the end of the day, and then so much was taken into consideration for loss of weight through work. I suppose there's two reasons for this. A, copper is really expensive, and if the workers are shaving bits of copper off, then the overseers want to know about this, because once those copper chisels are gone, that's it, there's no more mining. And B, I suppose that they could keep a record of how hard these guys are working, you know, so it's time in progress, I suppose. Now, although it's dusty, hard work, the work had to continue all the time. And from later records, there seemed to be two gangs. So a gang would go in there and cut and then come out and take a rest, and another gang would go in there and cut and come out and take a rest. So the work was always continuous. And until probably the first passageway was completed, there's not much for the scribes and the artisans to do. So maybe they were finishing the cut walls and smoothing them over, rubbing them down to get that flat surface that they needed to paint on. But it had to be continuous work. It took years to cut these tombs. So what was the motivation? Well, they are elevated to elite status. We know from later records that when kings of Egypt commissioned a tomb, they would send a caravan of goods which were not accessible for normal Egyptians. So we're talking about oil and linen and sheep and cattle and cows for milking. And of course you got your wheat and barley and all your other produce. So kings paid, they gave gifts. Remember, there's no money in Egypt, it's a barter system. So a king would give a gift to his workers. So Amunhotep I was succeeded by the next king, who was Tutmosis I, possibly a nephew. But Amunhotep I didn't have a son to succeed him. So we have to remember that Manetho included Tutmosis into this dynasty, so he must have been related to Amunhotep in some way. Maybe he married a daughter or wife to empower him with kingship. So that's what we'll look at. That's what we're going to look at in the next video, Tutmosis I. So there we are. Please hit the subscribe button. Still need 100 subscribers so I can go to YouTube and ask them for a channel domain as such. And I'll see you real soon. Bye for now.